from the Shelf is a podcast where industry experts fill in the gaps integral to growth for early stage beauty founders and brands. For our last episode for season 4, I was joined by Jasmin Foster, founder of Be Rooted, and we talked all things self-care for founders. Here's a snippet from our conversation.
We all know with entrepreneurship, the ebbs and flows are constantly happening. And unfortunately, a piece of entrepreneurship having so many highs and lows, it's almost kind of made me very numb to the middle. And I've had to really quickly adjust and understand what's worth my emotions going crazy.
Let me tell you a little bit more about Jasmin. Jasmin spent the last decade prior to founding Be Rooted working for other brands like Target or working in sales at Urban Skin RX to build other brands. And she asked herself what was going to be the most important thing to her when she thought about her passion, her purpose, her vision, her values. And that's where she found Be Rooted. Be Rooted is a stationery gifting brand that celebrates and lifts up women of color. And I'm so excited to have Jasmin on the podcast to talk about self-care as a founder, especially as someone who's worked in retail and worked in beauty and now is a founder herself. There were so many things that were gleaned from the conversation, and I really hope you all enjoy. We'll hear from our sponsors, and then we'll get into the show. I'd like to take a moment to thank the Beauty from the Shelf sponsor, the Emerson Group. Through their support, we're able to continue to share the tips and tools to help early stage brands grow from 0 to 20 million. Thank you again, and let's get into today's episode. As you mentioned that, Jasmin, there's so much going on as a founder. You're also a content creator, you're a business owner, a CEO. You wear so many hats. And I really am happy to sit down with you to talk self-care today because I know so many other founders can relate. And we talk a lot about tips and tools to grow from 0 to 20 million here on this podcast. And especially since my focus and passion is around BIPOC and women founders especially, I want to make sure that we also save some space for that mental health, that self-care, because this role of CEO and founder, it can take a lot on you because running an early stage business is demanding. It requires a lot. So I'd love to just start off by asking how you prioritize self-care while you're juggling all of the different things that you have to do as a founder and CEO, and just how you make time for yourself and all of the other commitments that you have in your role.
Yeah, I think the beginning of this journey, I did not prioritize self-care at all. The first year was such a grind, and I feel like I was holding down a full-time job while also I never called this a side hustle because it was from the beginning way bigger than just a side hustle. I feel like I was holding down a 9 to 5 and then a 5 to 9. And it took a lot out of me because I was so principled and was like, I want to make sure that I'm not working on Be Rooted while I'm doing my day job. And so I really tried to create those boundaries. But within that, I ran myself ragged for like the first year and a half. And so after that, I had to be really intentional because I was like, I cannot have another 18 months that look like that, where I could focus on prioritizing other things outside of just my business. And so making sure I made time for my friends, making sure that I made time for my family, making sure that I made time for myself, making sure that I made time for love, because I was like, a partner's not going to show up at my door. My friends are going to start to believe that I'm too busy to hang out with them. And if these things are important to me and I want to be able to 10, 20, 30 years down the road, have a well-rounded life, I can't just put all of those things on pause now. And so a couple of things, as I think about how I prioritized it is like blocking my calendar. And so in the beginning of the day, I block 9 to 11 o'clock so that I can just do things that are getting ish done, really making sure that I'm working the business very early in the morning because that's when my brain is at its peak. And I know that after 2, don't give me no hard tasks to do because the girl's brain has shut off, right? So 2 is when I can leave the office and go for my walks. 2 is when I can pick up the phone and text and check in on friends. 2 is when I'm researching what my birthday trip is going to be, because we're not going to do another year where I don't do a birthday trip, right? Like, that's the time where I can really make sure that I'm like tapping into some of those other areas. So for 2 to 4 to me is like, what are other parts of my life that need to be fed? And then I'm better at taking a pause, and then maybe I'm going to log back in later on that night, because I'm not going to sit here and pretend that like entrepreneurship stops from 7 to 2. Like, no, it's a 24-hour job. And if it isn't for some people, then that's amazing. Maybe they should be here kind of talking about their self-care practices. But you're always plugged in to the business in some way. Like, even like on TikTok, I might be mindlessly scrolling on TikTok at night, but honestly, I'm also checking out to see what's new in culture, what's popping, what's trending, what should we know about, what's vernacular that people are using that we should maybe think about putting on a journal, like what's important to people. So it's no longer just fully just scrolling on TikTok to just like mindlessly check out. It has a little bit of business in there, but it's important for me to carve out times in my day to also be intentional about those other pieces of my life that are important to me as well.
And I've heard a lot of folks, especially folks geared towards entrepreneurs, talk about the benefits of time blocking and really matching those things up to your energy levels. I'd love for you to expand on that a little bit and to share, is there anything in particular that you did to recognize what seems to work best for my natural body flow? What seems to work best based on when I feel the most creative? Were there things that you did? Did you sit down and write down, in one of your Be Rooted journals, like, this is when I find that I'm the most creative? Or how did you figure out what that right rhythm was for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just kind of taking inventory over the last like decade of working. So when I worked at Target, it was a super more like flexible. I feel like you could kind of come, like the hours were roughly like 8 to 5. But if you wanted to come in early, you wanted to leave late. And I always found myself, even when I was younger, like getting to work at 7. But then by like afternoon slump for me was like mad real. And so I found myself always being the first person, like when 4:30 hit and that first round of people are leaving, bye-bye. But I could get there at like 7, 6, whatever, that early, because I'm an early morning person. And then when I had to transition to a small brand and the hours of work were from 9 to 6, that killed me. I realized then that like after 2:33, that 3 to 6 period, I was so unproductive that like I felt like I wasn't giving anything to that company, because that's not when my brain worked. And so when I got into entrepreneurship and could set my own time frame, I tried to fit that like corporate model, right? Like, okay, like I need to be 8 to 5. And then one day I was like journaling about like just the power of freedom of being an entrepreneur. And the whole part of the reason for doing this is that I can design my life how I want to. And then I started thinking about, well, what do I want my work day to look like? And I'm like, who told me that this had to be an 8 to 5 job? Who wrote that rule for me? I think I just did that because that's what I've always kind of just like naturally been structured into doing. And so I was like, no, like, when are you actually the most productive? You wake up at 5 every day. Yeah, I know. I wake up at 5 every day. Like, why not use those morning times when you're naturally more energized to get things done? And so I've kind of had to adjust my hours based off of when I realized I had the most energy. So for me, that's from 7 to 2. I know that I'm much better at like nailing and getting things out the door between 9 and 11. So that's when I get my emails done. And then 11 to 2 is when I take my meetings. And so as I even have structured my job for my team, I'm really, for the few people that are on my team, I'm really thoughtful about like, when do they get the most energy? And how can we think differently about their work day so that they're also working during those times? Because I know that from 3 to 6, that's when I'm not energized. If I'm having someone work during that time, I'm not getting the most productive version of themselves. And so, yeah, it was more like an inventory kind of checking over years of like having to adjust to different work schedules and realizing that like, this ain't working for me. And the whole point of doing this entrepreneur thing is to have there's not a lot of perks. We ain't got the healthcare benefits. We ain't got the 401k match. So I might as well have the benefit be that I can start my day when I want to, okay?
I hear you on that, as I am also in a season of entrepreneurship and can fully relate. So thank you for that. And as I talk about that, I know as an entrepreneur, you obviously have to focus on the business. We're talking about self-care, but I think within that self-care, there's also this level of personal development or constant learning that I was really shocked to kind of find. Like, I was like, wow, as an entrepreneur, you almost have to be pivoting, have to be learning because your business changes and pivots. And if you want to be a long-standing brand, you got to go with the ebbs and flows. You know, it's not like, oh, well, you know, we got to have a new spreadsheet. No, you got to figure it out. So I'd love to hear what things you do to continue growing. You talked a little bit about, you know, TikTok being both for fun and also for research, but what do you do for personal development and just to make sure that you are growing? Are there any apps that you use or tools that you like to use that help you with those things?
Yeah, I would say really the first thing is like, you've got to be super honest with yourself as an entrepreneur. Like, you can't believe that you're good at everything because you're not. And the quicker you start to understand, like, what are deficiencies in your skill sets, which ones are okay because that's not business critical, but which ones are going to be detrimental to you. And if you don't figure out how to be astute and to get the right level of information around it, it's going to be a detrimental to not only yourself, but to your business very quickly. You have to be honest with yourself about that piece. And so for me, there's several things that I do. One example is like Amazon is an area where it has been kicking my butt it is hazed me for the last 2 years. And so I am constantly on YouTube, like listening to other like Amazon experts providing insights on like what they've done to grow their business in that area. I've also really leveraged my network. And then another is picking up the phone and calling my founder friends and being like, hey, I'm trying to do X, Y, and Z. Have you done this before? If not, do you know somebody who has? And so really leveraging the power of like sharing knowledge back and forth with my community of entrepreneur friends has been amazing. And living here in Atlanta has like 2-3x that because there's so many entrepreneurs that live here in this community that are super helpful and supportive. I also would say that like being scrappy. And so for another example is, you know, I have a lifestyle brand and the world is the oyster of the products that we want to develop, but the world is not the oyster of the products that I know how to develop. And so an example is that, you know, we're looking into textile products and I've never made any, you know, textile home goods in the past. And so getting on LinkedIn, looking at people that are consultants in the space and figuring out like, if I don't have the insights and knowledge, how do I bring in insights and knowledge to my team so that we can quickly be up to speed on new areas that we don't have, and being open and honest where, you know, we don't have those areas of expertise and leaning into that growth. And sometimes you have to pay for that. And that's okay too. And sometimes you have friends and networks that are able to share those insights with you for free. And then sometimes you have YouTube where it's like the people are building their brand off of sharing this information. And so I leverage different areas to get insight. I think we were talking too of just about how being an entrepreneur also makes you have to be a content creator. And I fought that for a solid year. Like, I didn't sign up for this. And
you're a micro influencer.
I had to have a conversation with myself around like, you're willing to do all of these other things to make the business successful. Why are you fighting this one? And so I literally hired a girl for 6 months. She was an influencer and I had her coach me on ways to set up my camera, ways to shoot things, how to make content engaging, teaching me about hooks, the timing, all of that. Now, I will not tell you that I'm a top tier influencer now, but what I will tell you is that my content is 10 times better than it was before. And so the name of the game is being scrappy and figuring out like what you're not good at and how do you quickly get insights.
That's really good. That influencer hat that so many founders are wearing is wild because there are people whose whole jobs is to create content. And it's like you're creating content while running a business. And that is the wild part. I mean, I hope that you were able to, on the side, just monetize some things from that and that it's not just to support the business.
I mean, no, like yes and no. Like last year, I was able to do a couple of like paid content things. But the reality is that like that's a whole nother job to even pitch for paid content opportunities. And then no shade, but like, who has the time? Like, so you sign a paid content opportunity and you think, amazing. Yes, I finally can put this skill set to use and I can get something for me. But what you don't realize is that oftentimes when you're working for bigger brands, They want to see multiple different versions. They want to have the ability to come back and give feedback, which means you might have to reshoot. Like, it's not just you. When I create content for the brand, I make one edit and I send it to the social team and you work with what you get. No, when you make content for other people, they want to have an opinion and voice too. And so what maybe was supposed to only take 2 hours is now turned into a 4 or 5 hour thing because you're making pivots and changing based off of their campaign needs. And so that's a whole nother job. And with being the CFO, CEO, CMO, CIO, CTO, I can't add on.
You said all these hats. All these hats. So look, on that topic, there's so many roles that you play, right? And that can generate a lot of pressure and a lot of also uncertainty. Are there things that you do to ground yourself in that so that you don't get too caught up? I mean, maybe you're the type of person who's like naturally zen and that doesn't freak you out. You know, for me, mom of 4, divorcee, the entrepreneurship thing is like, I don't know how people sleep at night with this, like, we got to see how much we're getting in terms of sales next month. We don't know. So I'd love to hear how you deal with the pressure and the uncertainty of entrepreneurship, especially as it relates to self-care and taking care of yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. And a lot of it, especially in my space, is because you're dependent on other people still wanting you, right? And so a couple of things is, one is being very knowledgeable about my own numbers. And so building out my models and forecasting and projections in the beginning of, well, actually at the end of last year for this year, so that it's not a surprise to me. You'd be very surprised by how many people don't know like what they need to run their business on. So I know exactly how much each month we need to be able to pay all the bills, keep the lights on, and keep momentum going forward. And so because I have a pathway, I feel like that helps make things like not feel so stressful because it's not like an unknown thing, right? I have a goal that we're trying to achieve, which feels really simple. But for a lot of people who are just getting started out, they're working off of vibes. And there's surprises, right? Like they're surprised by like, oh my God, we ran out of cash. Like, oh my, like, no, like it's really important to have like a cash flow statement so that you can understand how much you're really burning through and how much you need to keep on. And so for me, having concrete details allows for me to have a little bit more peace, right? But we all know with entrepreneurship, the ebbs and flows are constantly happening. And unfortunately, a piece of entrepreneurship having so many highs and lows, it's almost kind of made me very numb to the middle. And I've had to really quickly adjust and understand what's worth my emotions going crazy. When I first started off, anything that was bad or anything that was good that happened, I was just reacting, right? I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. Oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. And then you realize after like 6 months of doing that, like, oh no, that's not sustainable. Like we can't react to everything. And so I've had to be really discerning about what highs allow for me to get really excited about. And then what problems are problems that like we just put into the let's figure out how to fix it bucket, but I can't allow for you to take an emotional toll on my day. And then the other thing is that really trying to carve out time in moments where I get to shut my brain off. So like, I'm not going to bring business to the mat. And by the mat, I mean yoga. I'm not going to bring business to the mat. I'm not going to bring it into my workouts. I'm not going to bring it into a date. I'm not going to bring it into a phone call with my best friends. I'm not going to bring it onto a vacation. It doesn't need to interrupt my birthday. Like, you know, like really carving out times where I want to be intentional and leaning into things that are important for me to have a full, well-rounded life. Like I can't allow this to become everything. Because you find that sometimes people in entrepreneurship, they're showing up to a date fully focused and thinking about and talking about their business, showing up to their friend's birthday dinner, not tapped in because they're on their phone, checking what's going on in their business. Like to me, I've seen that and I refuse to allow that to be for myself because I needed to have those intentional moments to like be able to like decompress.
That's really good, Jasmin. I'm wondering, you kind of talked a little bit about some of those things that you are intentional about to disconnect. You know, so you said, if I'm going out for a yoga, like I'm not going to be thinking about my business. Or if I'm hanging out with friends, I'm intentionally making sure that I'm present. Are there any other things that you've noticed that are either triggers or things that you realize, oh, I think that the scale is tipping one way in the direction of work and I need to go a little bit back more to the middle? And if so, I'm wondering if you can share what those things are, those things that help you to realize, oh, I think I need to, level set. I need to, get grounded again because I'm focusing a little bit too much on work. And I need more of this balance for my own sanity and self-care.
I mean, I think for me, it was last year waking up and realizing, like, I'm in a new city and I don't think I have any friends here. Like, I have my friends that, have been riding with me for forever, but, like, I've moved to Atlanta and I have not made time to curate a community here. And it took a year for me to realize that. Like, I had just been existing and grinding and moving so fast that I didn't even realize that I hadn't really connected with any new human being in the city that I lived in for a very long time. And so for me, I was like, no, that's not okay. And so a lot of time it's self-regulating and being like, it's been a couple weeks. Have you pulsed in with anyone? Have you talked to anyone? Have you done something that's just for yourself? Have you leaned into a hobby? Okay, you said you wanted to start ceramic. Have you scheduled that for yourself? Your birthday's coming up. Do you know what you plan on doing? Who are you wanting to invite to that? Have you checked on your friends? Have you ate? There's just things where, I just have to keep reminding myself and putting that in my forethought, because what will happen is you'll wake up and a couple months have passed and you realize you haven't done any of those things. And so I had started this tracker in my notebook where I had put down, here's the 5 things that I want to try to make sure that are top of mind and importance of me. And it was my love life, my friendships, my hobbies, my health and wellness, and then obviously my business, but that happens every single day, right? And so I had started using a different color marker to track if I had done something to tap into each of those buckets every day. So essentially, you just kind of have a chart with 30 days. On the left-hand side, you write down the things that are important to you. And then you can visually see too, by using those different colors, which colors were lacking more that month, which colors were in abundance. And that also kind of helps rejigger for the next month to see, you know what, I had a lot of things in health and wellness in my business, but personal friendships and dating took a fall. So how do I rejigger that for the next month? And so that's been a good accountability for me as well.
I absolutely love that. And I'm a stationery girl through and through. Okay. I bought stationery at 2 different retailers.
I know.
I love stationery. So I love that. And we'll adapt that for myself, because I think even as a mom and a business owner, those things, they ring true for so many of us. It's so
absolutely
easy to get so involved in what you're doing that you forget, oh, I did say that I was going to check on my friend. My friend said that, her parents are sick and I didn't call to see how things are going. And I want to be a good friend. I need to pick up the phone. I need to make that phone call.
I also schedule on my phone. So people that say you were to tell me that you were having surgery or that your parent was sick, I'll put in my phone 2 or 3 weeks from now, call Monique back to see how things are going, which feels very regimented, and it shouldn't have to be that way. But I find that if it's not on my calendar or if it's not in my journal, it doesn't exist. And so that is a way to kind of make sure that I'm having and I'm not unintentionally checking in on moments I actually do want to show up for my friends. And so let me be intentional about it by actually putting it down in my calendar.
That's so good. I mean, intentionality is so important. And especially I can relate as, managing and juggling 4 kiddos. They each need different things. If it's not on my calendar, I tell people if it's not on my calendar, it literally is not happening. And sometimes that means I'm writing down on my mom's birthday, call mom to wish her happy birthday, which might seem like you don't remember. And it's not that I don't remember. It's just that the day goes by. Yep. And then you realize, wait a second, it's October 6th. And that I need to call the woman who brought me into this world to say I love you, to say happy birthday. And that intentionality, I think, is so important when you are juggling so many things, because it doesn't come as naturally, because I guess we don't have that free space to always just be able to do it kind of our free will, if you will.
Yeah. And I've also gotten into the habit of like after a date with a friend being like, and before we leave, let's put on the next time that we see each other. Because it's so important to have that follow-up in the moment for the moment. Because if not, you'll look up and you're like, dang, I've literally only seen my friend like one time this year. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's so important. Oh, I love that. I love that. So one other question that I have for you, Jasmin, because you worked for a retailer. You worked, that's where we met, right? You worked at Target. You mentioned that you work for a beauty brand and you own your own brand now. I'd love to hear, out of all of those experiences, what has been your biggest surprise, if you will, your biggest challenge, and your greatest joy. I'd love to hear those three things.
I never thought I would be an entrepreneur. I always called myself the entrepreneur's best friend because I love helping people dig in. I love helping people realize their full potential. I love small businesses. I love Black-owned businesses. I love supporting us. I love seeing us grow. I'm the biggest, when I find a brand that I like, I'm the biggest advocate and like cheerleader. Like my friends are like, okay, you've told us for the 5th time to try Ora Bora. Is my new favorite sparkling water. We're going to get it, Jasmin. We're going to get it. But like, I love just seeing the like, I'm like a student of like the small business game. So to me, the biggest surprise is that I actually took the leap of faith to do it myself. Because I've literally have always seen myself as like the entrepreneur's best friend. But when I was working in retail, I felt like my biggest challenge was that like I wasn't able to like be in it as much as I wanted to be, right? Because when you're working for big guys like Target or working for big guys like Amazon or whomever it is, like it takes a while for small businesses to be a meaningful piece of your pie. And so as much as you like maybe wanted to like love and nurture and grow, at the end of the day, like probably 80% or more of your business is going to be taken up by the national brands, which means that 80% or more of your time is going to be taken up by national brands. And there was a point in my career where I really realized that like serving the needs of Black women was where I wanted to focus my time and attention. And so if I wanted to do that, I needed to immerse myself and get myself closer into the action. And so even though I loved working for Target and loved working for the bigger brands I've worked for, I needed to get myself closer. And so the challenge was, how do I rectify this thought of like chasing these corporate dreams, having the 401k, having the income that allows for your auto pay to auto pay, while also going after what you believe might be your purpose and passion. And so I think a challenge of mine while sitting in those positions was like figuring that out. And that's what led me to work for a small brand, because it felt like it was a nice kind of in between. Okay, I can still have some of the things, but I'm not doing this fully on my own. I still get to like help people, right? And then the biggest joy literally every single day is I read every single comment, whether it's on social, whether it's reviews that come in, and seeing how our brand is impacting people. Whether it's people are gifting our brand to their friends to congratulate them or to welcome them into something, or whether it's people are gifting it to their daughters and they're talking about how their daughter's eyes are lighting up, seeing the representation. Having a girl wrote in this morning saying like, I only use Be Rooted journals. Like I like seeing that has been the greatest joy, because I don't take it for granted that I have a brand that people actually like are locked into, and that they feel like we're a place where they can come and belong. And so that has been my greatest joy, is being able to actually develop a brand that our community loves to be a part of. And when I was first starting this brand and just getting and praying for an order a day, you know, to know that we've now sold to like hundreds of thousands of people is like beyond that dream. And so that would be my joy.
Look, I think you dropped some real gems and knowledge. So I just would love to close with you letting people know where they can find you. I'll make sure that we link everything, of course, in the show notes, but feel free to share anything that you'd like to share and, closing thoughts.
You can find me at the Jasmin Foster on Instagram and at Jasmin Foster on TikTok. And the brand at Be Rooted Curl across all channels. If you are in the need for super dope, Black-owned, inclusively designed stationery, find us at Target. Find us in airports near you, on berootedco.com, on college campuses. We're going everywhere. And I would appreciate your love and support and sharing with your network.
Thank you so much, Jasmin. And I definitely encourage you all that are listening to check out some Be Rooted things. I personally do have a board that I'm looking at now, just above my computer, that is from Be Rooted, that just helps me to keep on track with my goals and things that I'm looking for. I love how stationery can keep you grounded and gives you that added discipline of writing things down and kind of like committing to it. So lover of beauty, lover of stationery too. It kind of like helps me with my routine. So yeah.
Absolutely. There's nothing like literally making it happen by writing it down and taking it out of your brain so your brain can stop ruminating about it.
Well, thank you, Jasmin.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you again to Jasmin for joining me today. There are so many things that I learned myself and good reminders and things that I should reinforce in my day-to-day as an entrepreneur myself. If you found this episode helpful, I encourage you to share it with friends and colleagues. And as always, leave us a review. I'll catch you on the next episode. Bye.